Hello and welcome to the Content Advantage. I'm your co-host Scott Abel, and I'd like to welcome my co-host Megan Gilhooly. Megan, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks, Scott. I'm Megan Gilhooly, as Scott said, and I'm with Zoom and Software. And today we're going to talk about technical communication and how it's always kind of been thought of as a cost center. It's always been thought of as a cost of doing business. And so we've invited Mark Lewis, a content strategist from Caliper Content Services, to talk to us about how to change that mentality and to make a connection for your tech content to sales. So Mark, welcome to the show. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah. Hey, everybody. Thanks for inviting me. It's going to be fun.
It will be. And before we have any fun, I should let the audience members, some of them who are undoubtedly new and may not have joined us before for one of the shows, let them know how things work around here. We cannot see or hear you. First of all, we only have access to our own cameras, so you don't have to worry about that. At any time during the show, if you'd like to ask a question of the presenter, you can use the Ask the Questions tab to type a question over to us. They'll get queued up in the background, and we'll know that you've asked a question. And if we have some time to slide them in within the time allowed for the show, we'll do so. Usually, we also stockpile a couple minutes at the end of the show to do just that. So don't be shy. If you've got questions, type them in. Also, there's additional content located in the attachments and links section where you can get content about today's show, provided by both the sponsor and today's guest. And there's also some special offers in there. So dig around and download and click your way through to the other additional content we've got available for you today. Also, if you'd like to suggest a topic for a future show or a guest that you'd like to see here, you can send us an email or you can type us in a little message and we'll get it from there as well. All right, so without further ado, let's let Megan start the show. And Mark, I know how passionate you are about this topic, so we've got a lot to say in a short amount of time, so let's do it.
Yeah, so Mark, let's start off with just getting to know you a little bit. And can you tell us just really quickly how you got connected to this field of information development?
Sure. Again, my name is Mark Lewis, and I'm with Caliper Content Services, and I design intelligent content solutions and content strategies for organizations all over the world. And originally, I was a software engineer and wrote object-oriented programs and loved it. And but I fell in love with tech writing. And then along came Ann Rockley's book, Managing Enterprise Content. And I went, ooh, object-oriented content, I get it. And boom, I went that path ever since in my career. So now I get to design intelligent content solutions and strategies for all these different companies around the world. So it's great.
Very cool.
That is very cool. And I'm glad that you came to talk to our audience today a little bit about the untapped value that's hidden in technical documentation. I know you've done a little research in that, and we wanted to talk today a little bit about the focus on how technical communication can be a sales enabler as well. Mm-hmm. And I know you've got a story that you like to start off with about how you kind of learned this lesson and why you're interested. So why don't you share that with the audience?
Sure. So everybody that already knows me, I'm an STC fellow, was tech writer for many, many years. So this is kind of a from the trenches conversation. And I'd heard a rumor at the software company that I worked for that they wanted to create custom user manuals, and I panicked. I thought, man, I can barely keep up with the topics that I have to write already. How am I going to do this? So I went to the owner of the company and I went begging for money and talking about my content problems and my needs, and he basically said, no, get out. It's just documentation, because I presented it as a cost.
I've been to this meeting before.
Yes, I think we've all been to that meeting.
And hate it. It's just documentation. I know people are twinging out in the audience. So I didn't know how to talk to executives, and I didn't realize that what I needed to do was talk to the owner about his business goals, not my needs, not my problems. Because I went in whining, and he's like, "Get out."
Yeah.
So that was.
Is that something you realized right away?
that was kind of stage one of my aha, because that was like 15 years ago.
Oh, that is a stage.
This, yeah. Well, I didn't know what to do. I didn't know how to talk to executives.
Sure.
And then back in 2012, we did the Datametrics 101 book, and in that book we talk about how to design metrics to prove the savings that's possible with data and content reuse and cost models. But that's about savings and about reducing cost, which,
Mhm.
if that's the executive's business goal, then you're gold. But it wasn't about sales. And so that was another, I'm like, gosh, I thought we'd be further along in convincing of people of the value of technical content, but we weren't. So a couple of years ago, we started doing the STC Intercom magazine, the September 2018 issue, which was
Yeah.
the value of content. And I started doing research, and I found that there was a lot of discussion in the sales industry that they needed intelligent content. And I was like, cool, they get it. They understand that I want personalized content. Um, I have all these content requirements, and it read like the requirements for intelligent content. I'm like, oh, they get it. So that's when I realized that there was an opportunity there. And so I had asked Scott, I'm like, hey, can you write about the customer journey and sales enablement for this issue of the magazine? And that's when my head kind of changed to this sales mindset that we need to have, that you have to prove the value of your content. And if for an executive the business goal is increasing sales, that's what you got to focus on.
Yeah, you spit it right out there, and it took a long time for me to learn that too.
Yeah.
I think it's because
Yeah.
we learn a lot about our craft, and then we want to share what we've learned, and so we talk in the way that we would to our peers instead of talking to our boss, right? And we
Yeah.
expect our boss to be able to extrapolate. After all, they're smart people, and they understand return on investment. Why don't they want to fund my project? And it was often
Yeah.
because we probably were not speaking to them in a language that they cared about.
Right.
Yeah.
It's very interesting that you kind of had the aha. I think you said, I guess doing the math would be about 13 years after
Yeah.
the first story you told us about, and
Yeah.
I think it's taken most of us that long to really get there. So you're not alone in that. But can you talk a little bit more about why technical documentation specifically, or product documentation that tech writers are writing, should play a supporting role in sales as well as maybe marketing?
So what I learned a couple of years ago, when we were doing this research for this STC Intercom magazine, was that that the customer journey was important. So I know customer experience is a hot topic, real
Yeah.
hot topic right now. And what's the content that you need to create that experience? And so a couple of years ago was, for me, Megan, it was my first introduction to the customer journey. Maybe it's old hat for people now, but that was my first exposure to it. And I was like, oh, okay, there's stages that that prospects and buyers go through. And so kind of I'll cut to the chase. What I learned was that you need to go and talk with your marketing department and say, hey, do you guys have a customer journey in place? Can you show it to me?
Right.
Because this is the opportunity, is to go figure out where you can plug your technical content into that customer journey. Because there's a lot of content like feature descriptions and benefits that you probably have in your technical documentation that could be plugged in there. And so what I'm advising is go learn what a customer journey is. As a matter of fact, 3 weeks ago, Kevin Nichols posted a white paper. Kevin Nichols of Avenue CX posted a white paper called content journeys and content mapping. Very good. It's about 30 pages long, so it's pretty meaty. Go read that. Go learn what a customer journey is, so you can start to understand what your marketing department has done, and figure out where you can plug in your content. So when you're able to provide content in that journey, and it's that much closer to a sale, then your content will be perceived of as valuable. If that's the
Right.
way the executives are thinking, it's like, oh, because I approached the owner years ago and just said, hey, I've got content I want to produce. Give me money to buy a solution. And all he saw was the cost center, cost,
Right.
cost,
Right.
cost.
Well,
I did this a few years ago when I was at Ping Identity. I laid out the customer journey, and then I put this big wavy line and mapped all of the content that was appropriate at each part of the customer journey. Now, sometimes technical content that was usually built for after, like post sales,
right.
was
Mhm.
actually very, very valuable for the sales teams. So I sat down with some of the sales folks, and they were like, oh, you have that content? We want that content. And so
Mhm.
really figuring out what of the content that you created for post sales can actually be valuable to the sales folks is really great. And we also figured out some stuff we hadn't been creating, but that we could easily
Mhm.
use reuse in order to create much more quickly than they could. So it's really interesting to tie those things together.
And Megan,
Yeah.
this is probably a really good time for you to say just briefly to the audience what Zoom In Software does and why you're connected to this topic today. Because I think pulling all that different kinds of content together after we understand who needs it and when is the job of software. So can you tell us a little bit
Yes.
about what Zoom In Software does?
Yes, absolutely. So Zoom helps customers to find answers that they need wherever they might be looking. So they might be trying to get information through Salesforce. They might be trying to get information through a doc portal, through your .com site, wherever it is. Zoom pulls all of that together, indexes it, and then presents it with a personalized and unified feel to the customer. And so in this way, we can reuse easily the content that is being presented to, say, an agent during support time or to a customer in the community. That same content could be used by a potential customer or prospect coming into the customer journey.
Excellent. So don't forget to
Yeah.
check out the attachments and
Mhm.
links section in our webinar viewing panel today, where there's some additional information about Zoom In and the kinds of software opportunities that they have available to help you with. I know that, Mark, before we have any mapping, we need to know what content is valuable and why. Can you talk to us a little bit about how you went about determining what was valuable and how could our audience members learn from your experiences?
Mm. So say I was kind of new to customer journeys, so I had to go and figure out, who is the audience. I know that there's different customer journeys you can have depending on who the audience is, but what we create that technical documentation, that technical content, and so what I realized was that, and this is my opinion, it's about educating the customer. And this is a soapbox I got on at my last job, and they just got tired of hearing it. It's like we have to educate the customer, and 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 if they don't understand what their real problem is, you have to kind of make them understand, these are the problems that you're having, because sometimes, and especially in a high tech world, you've got solutions that people don't really understand the problem they have. So you got to educate them about um, what that problem is, and then you take them through what the opportunities are to fix that. So you have like high level benefits and feature descriptions, then low level benefits and feature descriptions
Right.
that can be part of your technical content that could go into this customer journey and begin that education process. I mean, these could also be pieces of content that could go into RFPs and RFIs. I want to ask you a question, Megan. Were you in the marketing department when you did that customer journey?
No, we were under, what were we under? Support, and then
Mhm.
got moved, I think, under product for a while. But we were not in the marketing department. We worked very closely, however, with marketing, with sales, just sort of across the board.
Were they initially receptive to that? Because I'm going to make a point.
Sales, yes. Marketing, no.
Uh-huh.
And support to a certain degree, not very, right? So some people don't want to share their content. They want to create their own
Yeah.
content.
Yeah.
But sales was the one that was begging because they didn't want to create content. They wanted to sell, right? Whereas support was like, oh, we got this. We can create our knowledge articles.
Yeah.
But sales just wanted to use whatever they could. So they were actually, sales was very approachable.
Okay. I asked the question because when I approached marketing years ago, it was,
Yeah.
Yes.
silo
Yes.
effect
Yes.
was really strong. And
Yes.
I actually went and wrote a case study that I had a hard time getting them to accept. It's what I'm saying to the audience is there's going to be some resistance potentially from marketing and sales where they're like, well, wait a minute, you're that tech pubs department over there. Why are you sticking your nose in our business? Get out. So you may have to do some work after hours of creating some content, like see the customer journey, figure out what technical content could go in there. If there's new content that you have to write, you may have to like do it after hours. Like I'm saying, don't get fired, but go
Right.
create
Yeah.
something, give it to marketing and say, look, this could help us, get a sale. This is something that that customers may be asking for that would attract them to our organization.
Yeah.
And you may have to nuzzle up to marketing and get on their good side. Because my experience was that there was resistance in the beginning. It was just
Yeah,
like, no,
absolutely.
no.
Yeah.
But
I brought on Zoomin for that very reason when I was at Ping. And it was because I knew that marketing wanted to create their content, support wanted to create their content. We obviously, our job was to create content, and the sales team needed our content. And so I really brought in Zoomin to bring those things together so that we could optimize the silos instead of going head to head and saying my content versus your content. It allowed us to say your content's important, my content's important. Let's pull it all together in a unified way and then push it out to the different places we needed to be.
Both of you had in those journeys that you had trying to change your organizations that you were serving. You both had to bring evidence to the table. And Mark, I know you talked a little bit about the fact that there's anecdotal evidence, and then there's also quantifiable evidence. Can you talk a little bit about, let's start with anecdotal evidence.
So in that context, one of the things I learned was that it can be difficult to get access to the customer to find out what it is that they want.
Right.
I interviewed for a job, and I said, what's going to be my greatest challenge? And the president said, getting access to the customer, which kind of blew my mind at the time, but he was serious. So again, that was the situation where you may have to go to marketing, go to sales, go to these customer facing staff and say, hey, what are you hearing?
Yeah.
What are customers asking for? Are they complaining, saying, hey, your competition has, they put their user manuals online, but you guys don't. So you may have to go ask people that have access to the customers find out what's missing, what the customers are asking for, and use that as a way to figure out what content's missing that you need to create.
Yeah, that's so true. I mean, the sales folks know they are interfacing with prospects all the time. They know what we're missing, right? They absolutely know that. So that's a really great place to look for anecdotal evidence for sure.
Yeah. The last thing you want is find out on a product review forum or something that your company stinks because it is missing this content.
Right.
But it's still, I mean, it's not, that's not exactly quantifiable, but it is information that you can use to improve your customer experience.
Absolutely. Yep, absolutely. Working with the social team to make sure you're getting all of the input that's coming in through social media. That's a great way to do it.
Yeah, Scott, you talked about I'm gonna change it to data. A data conversation. You said quantifiable.
Yeah.
Say a couple of years ago when we started doing that STC intercom issue, that's when I first saw that intelligent content and sales enablement went together. So being able to have some software that can track what your customers are reading, what they're downloading,
Right.
can be that how do we measure? We can sit there and say we think our content is valuable because we're putting it out there, but how do you really know? How do you really measure? So it's in today's day and age with sales enablement software, if you can measure, track what people are downloading, and then are these the people that are buying? Which ones download this piece of content? Did they buy or not? So you can start to do some
Sure.
analysis like that to quantify whether your content was effective.
You're not limiting it to buying either. I think you're saying that the end goal might be a purchase in some kinds of setups, but it's moving people along the journey and
Hmm.
using content to help make them capable of moving to the next phase. Because sometimes our journeys aren't really customer journeys. They're the way we wish people would buy our products. So we imagine the journey that they're on, like, oh, and then once they read my white paper, everything will
they're
happen.
gonna be in.
They will
Yeah.
they will purchase right then because my white
Right.
paper is fabulous. And I think
Yeah.
we have to think about how do we take those big deliverables like white papers and find those nuggets that are hidden inside, and then use a software like Zoom In or something similar to help push the right piece of content in the right moment to get them to the
Yeah.
next stage of the journey, or to allow them to not be part of the journey at all, right? Because we all do make decisions as consumers based on content. And sometimes the decision is, I'm not continuing on this journey,
Right.
right?
And another big piece of the puzzle is whether they continue on the journey or not as they go through this pipeline, this customer journey. Understanding when, not just when they're downloading stuff, but when your salespeople are using stuff to add to the campaigns they're sending out to specific customers. So if one salesperson is trying to get a multi-billion-dollar account, let's say, and they used 5 of your assets, and they believe that being able to send those 5 assets gave the company some credibility, that should go into Salesforce or into whatever the CRM is, so that you can start to track that,
Yeah.
yes, you're supporting the sales team and doing what they're trying to do, even if it didn't directly lead to a sale.
So data driven definitely is the word there. Hey, we got a few questions from the audience members. Mark, I'm going to say that one of the first things we did was we dropped a little jargon in there with intelligent content, and not everybody knows what that is. So I'm going to tell people that briefly. Intelligent content is modular, smaller pieces of structured, semantically rich content that's designed to be repurposed and to allow you to process it by a machine, but also have it be really useful to human beings by being relevant and just what they need. Can you mention anything else about intelligent content that would help newbies in the audience understand that?
Yeah, I think two things. It gives you that ability to sprinkle in metadata where you need to on those pieces of content, so that you can specify that this piece of content is for a particular audience, which plays a role in the customer journey.
Yep.
And
Mhm.
it's we talked about this at Content Marketing World a few years ago. It's how you get personalization done. And so
Right.
Yes.
that's an hour-long conversation,
That's
but
another step.
the marketing world, they understood that that intelligent content and that ability to break the content into whatever size you need it and put
Right.
metadata on it to identify it. That's how you could say, well, I've got a customer that's interested in 3 of the topics on my website. When I create new content that's one of those 3 topics, then I email that out to them, so that when they get an email and they receive it, they know it's a topic they care about, not just some blanket email that they're not going to read, because I delete those. If I get a blanket email, no
Yeah.
way. But if I was getting a personalized email that was a topic I cared about, yeah, I do that. And so
Mhm.
I think sales has figured out that they want personalized content like that as well. Either you push it out to the reader when it's ready, based on their interests, or when they come in to your website and query for it, they're going to find it because that search metadata is on there. So very, that's the intelligent content soapbox, but that's how we get personalization done in 60 seconds.
Excellent.
Yeah.
What other opportunities do you see out there for technical content, just in general? You don't have to wax poetic about it, but aside from sales, where else could we leverage some tech doc content that's really valuable if they only knew that we had it?
Interesting. Yeah, all the different places you could plug it into your customer journey. I think kind of talking about when Megan was talking about getting together with sales and marketing, training people, the training staff is an opportunity to reuse this content as well. If you can, design for it, then you can create these materials that can be used for internal training, and for training new sales staff that are trying to get up to speed and sell the product. So there's a term for that. Peer learning, I think, is the term in sales enablement. So
Yeah.
training the sales staff,
It
get
seems
them up to speed.
training the customer too might also be something. There's a trend toward onboarding people and being able to walk them through your experience, and little pieces of content fed to them along the way can help them understand your product and how it might benefit them, especially when we're spoon feeding them one little step at a time.
Yeah, that's that education
Yes.
paragraph. I said, yep.
Yeah. I sent out an email on Friday, and my email last Friday was all about what tech writers can learn from content marketers specifically, because content marketers are great at telling the story, right? They're always really good storytellers. And technical writers are good at being very useful. And I think content marketers have learned from tech writers how to be more useful, but we can learn a lot about telling the story. And I think you can kind of take any point on that customer journey, and whoever services that, we as tech writers can learn from them. We can learn from sales about who our customers are, what their needs are. We can learn from content marketers about telling a story. We can learn from trainers about maybe how to change our content and add a different flow so that you're sending them through a training journey of sorts. And we actually have a customer that did exactly that. They brought in a learning and training team, and they set up their Zoom in portal with Metro maps, these things that basically say, start here if you're this persona. So you dive in, you're this persona, you start here. Here's all the stuff you need to do first. Okay, you're finished with that, move over here. Now you need to do this stuff. And so we visually added the training component to their content, and it's just amazing to kind of go through. So I think we can learn from all of these folks.
Well, that's great advice too. And I would tell you that my first experience watching sales teams document what they do, and I don't mean creating documentation, I mean typing on the keyboard whenever they are required to record some data that's important. I recognized that they were doing it, and they were being judged by where they released the content during the life cycle. Did it perform? So the question wasn't, did you publish it? Did you write it well? The question was, did it work?
Yes.
And that's what they care about. And when I realized that that's what they cared about, I realized I need to be able to give them little pieces that help them do the thing they care about. Then they'll care about me. Until then, they think, who cares about your big, humongous tech doc manual? We know that there's little nuggets hidden in there, but they don't. And so I think that that's important for us to play a role in understanding the jobs of the people we're trying to assist, so that they find us valuable. We can plug our content right in. We know what they care about.
Yeah.
It's tough.
So Scott, sorry, go ahead, Mark.
I was just gonna. It's tough because we know that our content's valuable. We work very hard to create that technical content, but it's technical content. It's not marketing content. So you really gotta say nuzzle up and get familiar with the marketing people and convince them that, hey, I've got some valuable content that could really help. Let's work together to figure out how to insert it where it needs to be, and then then that content is deemed valuable, and then therefore the tech writer becomes valuable as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, somebody was asking for very specific actionable takeaways from some of the anecdotes we've had. And so I just want to kind of recap some of those things before we go on to another question. I think the first one you talked about was make sure you have and understand the customer journey.
Mm-hmm.
The second is collaborate with sales and marketing to ensure that you understand how your content is hopefully positively impacting those two areas. A third would be to create on the customer journey, actually post, like do one of those curves that I talked about and actually place all of the content you do along that customer journey so that you understand when one piece of content maybe hits only one part of the customer journey, or another piece of content might hit, 3 parts of the customer journey. So what are some other quick things we can throw out to just give them really good advice?
Mm-hmm. So learn about customer journeys, read Kevin Nichols' new white paper, figure out, I'm kind of injecting in yours, figure out what content you already have that can be plugged in, and figure out where the gap is. And then you said something interesting a second ago is also learn about telling stories. That's something that I didn't get, like the story that I told in the very beginning 15 years ago. I failed. I totally failed to present a story to the owner of the company because I didn't understand his business goals. And understanding what your organization's business goals are, I think, are another key piece of advice, because I didn't.
Absolutely.
I didn't.
Yeah.
And so ultimately your content is going to want to help facilitate those business goals in some way. I mean, this could be a nonprofit organization that, it's not necessarily about sales, but in general, find out what your organization's business goals are, see what marketing's doing to address them, see what sales is doing and getting in there to address those business goals. And so that figuring out what the story needs to be was something that we came up with as we were working on the STC Intercom magazine. At that time, I realized that I needed to understand how to write a business case for an intelligent content solution, how to tell that story. And so we started writing our new book, which is Making the Business Case for Intelligent Content, because we needed to understand how to tell that story so that we could help people get support from executives to pay for solutions and services. So read about, find a book from marketing about, well, actually, I think Harvard Business Review or Harvard Business Press has a book about strategy that talks about telling stories. So learn how to tell a story, and that'll also kind of help when you start talking with marketing, because they're like, oh, this person understands my world.
Yeah, marketing starts with the persona, and they start with some self-identified imaginary customers, right, that are hopefully representative of real ones. And the stories are mapped directly to those behaviors that are identified as being belonging to those persona. And if we don't do that, take the time to understand what they're talking about, we'll miss opportunities to plug in. And so, Mark, I think you were spot on about recognizing that. And thanks for mentioning Kevin Nichols. For audience members that are wondering, who is Kevin Nichols? Kevin Nichols will be our guest on December the 8th. He runs a company called Avenue CX. And so Megan and I will be talking to him, ironically, about the customer journey and how to map it and how to talk about your content and in ways that are meaningful during the journey. So you'll be able to catch that show on December the 8th. Other than that, It looks like we've got a couple of questions here really, really quickly. Well, one that I cannot answer because it's a tech support question. So we'll skip that one. When you tell your story, make the customer the hero, says one of our viewers. Not a question, but I think we could nod and say that's
great comment.
A really good strategy. And one thing to ask, is there any way that we could talk a little bit about tools? And I'm not really sure what we would talk about here, but do you have any thoughts on tools for connecting technical communication to sales?
Well, first off, getting on the intelligent content soapbox, there's that being able to bring the departments together. Megan talked about bringing marketing and sales together. And if you're not all using the same tools, then you're too separated. You can't share content between each other. You can't workflow content. And so lately I've been using the term intelligent collaboration as a way to bring different departments together. So some tool, whether it's, it doesn't have to be XML based, as long as you've got some a strategy in place for reusing content, having it in pieces. You can have some homebrew workflow, but design your workflows. Know who needs to be editing and reviewing the content, and design something where you bring multiple departments together. There's a lot of great CMSs out there, many, but keep an eye on the ones that facilitate intelligent collaboration, I think.
Yeah.
So that's
a really good point. And I want to add that we need to think about two things, balancing two things here. You need to think about the author experience, and you need to think about the customer experience. And as we try to balance those two things, if you over focus on the customer experience and you don't focus enough on the author experience, you're not getting the collaboration, you're wasting a lot of time, you're spending a lot of money in order to create a better customer experience. If, on the other hand, you focus too much on the author experience, you may give up on some of the customer experience. So you really, if you think of it as a 2x2, you need to be up in that upper right-hand quadrant, right, where we have high customer experience focus and high author experience focus. So think about tools that will help to bring together sources of content, but will also push out to anywhere the customer wants to be. So if they want content and they're in Salesforce, give it to them there. If they're in your community, give it to them there. If they're in your .com site, give it to them there.
That's right. We're not in the business of building another silo for salespeople. We're not having the salespeople tech support website. That's silly. Let's take our content and move it into the environments where the actual people that we want to help are already working, like Salesforce and ServiceNow, so that they can benefit from the productivity enhancements and not be distracted as often by yet another thing they need to do to leave the software they're already in. We all know as authors how frustrating that is, to have to leave a piece of software and then come back and have it not remember correctly, or you have to start all over again.
Right.
And they have the same problems that we do. And I think the sooner we recognize that, the more valuable we'll be toward them. So thank you. Yeah, Mark, you have the last point here.
And what I really like is having connectivity between the consumed content and the source content, because when you figure out that a piece of content is or isn't effective, a piece of consumed content, then you can go back. If there's a direct trace link to the source, then if you need to make an adjustment, you can. When you've got these older solutions that don't have that connectivity between the published content and the source, it's a nightmare. But if you have that direct linkage, that makes
if you have great post-production analytics that help you close the loop to show that you've made the right assumptions in your content strategy, that's when you're golden, right?
Yeah.
Very good.
To recognize when you made the wrong decisions and correct that, then do that
exactly,
and then see the number go up in a positive way.
Exactly.
Yes, we make mistakes, but because we have a connection to what we're trying to accomplish, we know when it's performing well, and which we didn't for many years as tech comm people. So I think it's exciting for us. We get to learn now when our content's valuable.
Yes, absolutely.
All right, well, listen, we're running out of time today. So Megan and I would like to thank you, Mark, for joining us. I know you could talk a lot about this, and we hope to have you back on another show to talk some more in detail about some of these topics that you're most passionate about. So thanks for joining us today.
Hey, thanks for having me. It was great.
And before everyone signs off, make sure you let us know what you thought of today's show. Please use the Rate This tab, the Rate This tab located in your viewing panel, and give us a 1 to 5 star rating. Let us know what you thought about it, and then add some comments so that we know how to improve for our next show.
Excellent. And speaking of our next show, we want you to know that you're invited to the next show, September the 15th. We're going to have a live chat here with Ray Walsh, who is an expert in internal communication. He's going to make the argument about why we should invest the same amount of time and care localizing content for the people that we work with, not just the people that we're trying to sell products to or service their technical documentation needs. So it'll be an interesting show for those of you in multilingual environments. So definitely you're going to want to join us. Until then, I say Megan and I both wish you safety and to be healthy and keep doing good work. And we'll see you at another show here in the upcoming future. Thanks, Mark, for joining us today.
Thanks, Mark. Thanks everyone
everybody.
for joining. Ensure your customers find the answers they need with Zoomin. Bring together product content from all teams and sources to deliver a unified, personalized content experience. Check us out at www.zoominsoftware.com.